Good morning to you. Mark Stott with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion here, talking about Hurricane Dorian. My software is being weird, so if I turn on the webcam and you see me, I'll turn it on for a second. Hi, I did shave, as you see from yesterday, but if I leave it on, it starts to lock up these little buttons up here, and I can't click on any tabs, and it's just a real pain in the butt. I don't know why it's doing that, but nevertheless, let's get on with the discussion. Look at Hurricane Dorian here. A few things of note that are very important. First of all, in this interface here from the National Hurricane Center homepage, please look at this local information on Dorian. These are the local weather forecast offices, and these are your hurricane local statements. These are very helpful, so please go and click on those. You have Miami, Melbourne, Jacksonville, the Tampa Bay area, etc., and eventually these will expand to Charleston and Wilmington and probably Wakefield, Virginia, etc. So that's very helpful. All right, looking at the public advisory, a few things of note in here. I'm not going to go through watches and warnings and whatever. I want to try to pick out things that I feel are extremely relevant in terms of changes, things for you to pay attention to, and point out information that can ultimately be very helpful for you. So a couple of items of very much importance. The winds have come down from 185 to 155. That is certainly good news, but it does not mean that this is any, well, it is less dangerous, but it's still very, very bad. It's like being hit by a freight train. Instead of, it was coming at you at 60 miles an hour, it's coming at you at 50 miles per hour, right? It's still going to be very, very bad. And the bearing here is important. It's moving west still, but the bearing at 280, 1 mile per hour, it's just crawling, but it is gaining a little bit of latitude, and that's important. Of course, the pressure coming up a little bit, 922 millibars, and it's important to note it's not weakening because of wind shear or other truly detrimental factors in the atmosphere affecting Dorian. It's sitting over land, the Bahamas, our land, and so there are some frictional effects. It is disturbing the water, sapping some of the energy, and it's self-destructing a little bit. So if it sat there for 2 days, it would probably be down to 80 miles an hour or something. But that's not going to happen. And the other thing is the fact that as it weakens, the wind field spreads out, and that's important too. Hard to explain why that happens, but it does happen. So this is the watch warning information. I encourage you to read that. What I want to point out, maximum sustained winds, 155, and there we go. The hurricane force winds extend outward up to 45 miles from the center, and the tropical storm force winds 140. These numbers right here are going to increase over time. Not dramatically, hopefully, but this means more people will feel these effects. So when we're talking about it's forecast to stay offshore. Well, the center might be, but if the center is 30 miles offshore, then hurricane force winds could be 15 miles onshore. You understand that? And if the center is 40 miles offshore, the tropical storm force winds could be 100 miles onshore. So that's very problematic. Hazards affecting land. This is very important. Wind, obviously still catastrophic. Tropical storm, hurricane conditions, etc. Storm surge in the Bahamas. Need we say more? We've seen the video. For Florida, coming up, and to parts of the southeast now, we're talking about up into Savannah, Georgia. Lantana to the Savannah River, 4 to 7 feet. That's above ground level. All right, and that's what it says. The water could reach the following heights above ground, somewhere in the indicated areas if the peak surge occurs at the time of high tide. So if my hotel room filled up with 4 feet of water, that would be pretty dramatic. If it filled up with 7 feet of water, I would drown if I couldn't get out. So please keep that in mind. That's above ground. And this right here is critical. water levels could begin to rise well in advance of the arrival of strong winds. If you are waiting to see what happens and you live in an area that's prone to storm surge flooding, and you're thinking, well, I saw something on social media that said it should do this or it should do that, so I'm going to wait till tomorrow. And the water starts rising a couple of feet and you can't get out, and then it rises another 8 feet for some reason, maybe it goes up. Waiting in an area where storm surge is one of your biggest hazards can cost you your life. Okay? So if you're told to evacuate, please do evacuate. I know that it's difficult, but that's what it's there for, to save you. A very important statement. I'm just having all kinds of trouble with this right here. Very important paragraph in today's discussion. Rainfall. Unbelievable amounts of rain because of the slow movement in the Bahamas, of course, through the Carolinas, the coastal Carolinas, so not too far inland at least. Maybe 15 inches. Florida Peninsula through Georgia as much as 10 inches. About the rainfall here for the southeast United States, we are not looking at present time at another Florence or Matthew or Harvey. You know, Harvey was in Houston and vicinity, obviously, but I'm just saying this does not look to be the same setup. That being said, there will be flooding. Okay, so streams, creeks, rivers that are prone to flooding will rise quickly, and there will be some flooding, but more than likely not the catastrophic flood event that we saw last year. For example, coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Florence. Let me grab my water. All this talking. There we go. All this talking, and I've been sleeping pretty good, but it wears you out. Alrighty, so here is something I want to point out. Dorian is located, generally speaking, right over here on the edge of this high ocean heat content, and it will be over fairly high ocean heat content for a while, but if it gets close enough to the coast there, the ocean heat content drops, but make no mistake, it's still very warm. And this water all through here is undisturbed. There's no previous hurricanes or storms to mix it up, etc. All right, so that's something to bear in mind. Oh yeah, real quick, a lot of stuff to cover here. The map. What does the track map look like from the 11 o'clock advisory? Well, let's scroll down and take a look. Here we go. So here's the track map, and it shows a fairly close approach, especially north of Cape Canaveral and the Space Coast to the coastline. And remember that the effects are going to extend outward from this center of circulation. So these little M's and these H's represent the center, and the cone represents where the center is usually forecast. Like, it's not going to leave the cone most of the time. That's just about the center. The cone tells us nothing about the impacts. This orange opaque thing here, that's the tropical storm force wind field. That is the hurricane force wind field. This thing, I wish I could move it, that'd be cool. And that's what they do on television, but that's fine. So this thing is going to kind of move up the coast, and it's going to get bigger, this area right here. That is your impact. So there will be storm surge of 4 to 7 feet for portions of this area, and then we're going to have problems up here in the Carolinas with storm surge. So please understand, as this moves along, if it never touches the coast with the core, the eye, so what? In terms of millions of people being impacted. You have to think of it that way. Matthew was not that long ago, folks, and this is a very similar setup to Matthew, except Dorian could end up being stronger than Matthew. We'll have to see how that plays out. All right? Still has lots of warm water that it can traverse, as you see in the upper ocean heat content map. And it's got the Gulf Stream running up through here, which is a moving river within the ocean of warm water. And So it's not going to weaken substantially. Trust me, the impacts are going to be substantial themselves. All right, looking at Twitter, a couple of things of note. Eric Webb, eyewall replacement cycle, very seamless. What is that? It's where the inner eye, which you can see the eyewall right in there, watch how that kind of goes away. It's over Grand Bahama, and then the outer eyewall takes over, and then the inner eye, the eye itself, expands. You see that? That's that wind field I was telling you about. It's going to get larger. It pushes everything out. So instead of a skater bringing their arms in and they spin faster, when they take their arms out, they start to slow down, but also that angular momentum spreads out. And you can see that very clear in this radar image. This is not a computer simulation. This is a true radar image over the past 10 hours. And you see at the very beginning that inner eye wall collapses and the outer eye wall starts to take over. And after it clears land, that outer eye wall will try to become fierce and dominant and intensify and so forth and so on. All right, so there's that. Michael Ventris, just to give you an idea of who that is, PhD, works up with the weather company, very smart guy, good with maps, good guy to follow. Talking about the various models. The GFS has not been verifying all that well with regards to the predicted location of Hurricane Dorian today. The red X indicate the observed location, which is now southwest of the predicted locations from all cycles. So here are your GFS predictions, the last few cycles, and you can see, let me use green for the track of Dorian here. Got a color right on it. Make sure I get it accurate. That's the actual track of Dorian, and all the forecast cycles for the GFS are north of there. So Dorian is still generally south of the GFS, not by a lot, but this, notion that every mile is going to count in terms of these impacts up here along the Florida and Carolina, Georgia coastline, that's when it really starts to matter. Okay? So the GFS not handling it very well. The ECMWF appears to be handling the track better than the GFS, generally speaking, although the ECMWF was more to the west than the actual where Dorian is, for what it's worth. So we'll see. And then he says he thinks that the surprising model here is the Canadian model, the updated version, called the GEM, and it's been doing really well. Generally speaking, the Canadian has been on top, and depending on which run, what is it, the black line right in there, I think is the 0Z, if I'm not mistaken, and it brings it pretty close to the Florida coast too. So really all of these models are showing that really from Melbourne north, along the Space Coast, up through potentially Jacksonville, Brunswick, Savannah, Charleston, etc., those areas could see more of these direct impacts. Finally, the H-Wharf, most of the modeling has also been north of the actual track. The H-Wharf is the Hurricane Weather Research Forecast model, and is based off of GFS background information. So no surprise that the GFS and the H-Wharf have both been kind of south of the actual observed tracks. So just something to look at for what it's worth. All right, so here is that satellite animation I was talking about. Let's refresh it since I've been yammering away here, get some new images. So let's speed it up. This is off the weathernerds.org site, and we can see, hard to tell, it's subtle, but the eye has become larger and the wind field is expanding, no doubt about it. And if you just look at this little point right here on Grand Bahama, it is moving somewhat west, and the overall motion is wobbling off to the north and west, and it's getting back out over the water. That's very important too. It's going to clear Grand Bahama there pretty soon. So we'll watch this throughout the day. But this is what I want to show you too. I want to compare it to the H-Wharf. All right? So let's stop it at the very last frame. And if we place the center of the eye is right there, okay, that's pretty approximate. And then let's look at the H-Wharf model from this morning. All right, so the H-Wharf, this is the 10-meter wind, which is 35 feet up, and your mean sea level pressure. It initialized it too strong. First of all, it shows 913, and we know that Dorian is 922, but at 2 a.m. when this is initialized, well, no, this is the 9 hours out. Well, 9 hours, 15Z, which is right around now, 11 a.m. Eastern time. It's still too strong. And there's some indications from Levi Cowan, I saw him talking about this, that a weaker Dorian takes up less atmosphere and will be steered perhaps more by the lower parts that would push from east to west. We're starting to get very complicated here, but it's worthy to note that the model shows 913 right now, 11 a.m. roughly, and it's actually 922. It is a little weaker. All right, so that's where the H-Wharf says it should be. Where is it actually? Well, let's go back and look. It's not quite there yet. It is still a little south and east of where the H-Wharf said it was supposed to be at this time frame. Nevertheless, if we go through these images from the 6Z run, these colors here represent the wind field, as you can see on the right, okay? And once you get into these reds and these purples in here, etc., it starts to bring tropical storm, and hurricane force winds respectively. And as you can see, if you know your geography, there's Cape Canaveral in here. You go on down the coast, Vero Beach, Palm Coast, Palm Bay, Hutchinson Island, Jupiter, basically areas north of Lake Okeechobee, 27 north. You're going to have north-northwest wind coming in, possibly a tropical storm can force if you get a rain band. And then now we're getting into the structure, and the wind field picks up, but then when those bands come through, it gets even windier. But overall, this is what the structure of the wind field looks like. That's what I'm trying to show you here. So this is tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning, because today is Monday, right? Yep. So, hold on. I got the phantom arrow back. There we go. So there's Tuesday morning, Tuesday into the afternoon. And you see what begins to happen. Now hurricane force winds in those pinks, or purples, sorry, pink would be much higher. Just touching Cape Canaveral now, they're probably on shore, Titusville, maybe Merritt Island, and on up the coast from there. New Smyrna Beach, Ormond Beach, Daytona. And look, the eye, weird looking because it's interacting with land, weakening, 953 on the pressure there. But boy, the wind field is expanding. So Jacksonville, hurricane force winds, Marineland, A1A is probably going to have a lot of damage to it. It's my alarm. I'm already up. So Savannah, Brunswick, all those areas as this comes up. If this were to happen verbatim, you move this offshore 20 more miles and the effects are less. But one thing that is almost certain as this moves up the coast, a storm surge of some caliber, several feet above normal ground, above the ground and normal levels, is going to take place. Heavy rain, windy, power outages. So again, it's the difference of being hit by a freight train at 60 miles an hour or at 40 miles per hour. It's going to be bad. It's just one wiping you completely out versus the other one being very damaging. And in terms of what's going to happen at your house, nobody can tell you that. These things are just far too complicated. So understand the impacts, and that people all along the area here from West Palm Beach south, I think you're good, generally speaking. Once you get north of the lake and on up the coast here, into the Outer Banks, and maybe even New England and Atlantic Canada. Look at the 5-day track. You bring this right here It's extra tropical. It's transitioning into like a mid-latitude, big-time spread-out storm. But, you know, if this comes up and the angle is, and look at the cone, it's right up there. I mean, friggin' southeast Massachusetts, Boston, you're in the cone of uncertainty, eastern Long Island, okay? Parts of Delaware, Steve, right? Steve, I'm tired. This could affect a lot of people and cause damage over thousands of miles of coastline. So conveying these impacts to you folks is what I'm trying to do. All of this area through here would have probably the worst impacts along the coast. Inland areas through here could see heavy rain. I don't think Raleigh-Durham up through Greensboro, Charlotte should be fine, Columbia, all of those areas, light rain at worst, okay? And again, the threat of a catastrophic flood event from rain is not showing up, and that's good. So there you go. Just to review one more time, I want to make sure I leave you, since I've talked about so much, a refresher on very important information. Local information from your local weather forecast office. Right there. That's free. Well, you pay for it with your taxes. At least you should. So please read those. And remember, those will expand to other areas once watches and warnings are put up. We're still a few days away from that, or a day or two, or whatever. All right, real quick about where things are going, what am I doing, etc. First, we are setting up camera systems and weather stations in Florida today. In fact, when I wrap all this up and upload it, etc., we'll begin to pack up and leave where we are in Palm Coast. Information-wise, HurricaneTrack.com, been around for 20 years, and what I'm doing is I'm just focusing everything over here on Patreon. So you'll see there's a link there on HurricaneTrack.com, and it's kind of like my own little social media world over here where I can post public information in this post area. As you can see, come on, load for me please. A lot of these are public. But then our supporters who are helping with our crowdfunding, they can comment and they can see anything that we have that's exclusive. And 90% of this is available to the public. But for the exclusive access to the camera systems and the weather data, you have to be a patron. And that's how we fund this. We do have an app. I'm not going to talk about what its name is because it is not working properly. But if you have the app already, hopefully it'll open because we are going to put the camera systems in the app. So if your app worked last year or you got it recently, keep trying to open it because I can't explain it. It's weird, and we'll talk about it more later, but I'm just being straightforward with you. The app is having problems, so I'm not going to promote it. Of course not. And so what we're doing, instead of posting a blog on HurricaneTrack.com and something over here on Facebook, I mean, until I can afford a social media person, I have to be efficient with my time. So my Twitter feed is embedded on the HurricaneTrack.com homepage. So that's good. Anything I post on Twitter shows up there. And then all of this information in a blogging, Twitter-ish, Facebook-ish kind of aggregate, that's what Patreon allows me to do. And it also allows people to fund our effort. As little as $1 a month, $10, which grants you access to all of our camera systems, etc., through our Hurricane Track Insider site, and as much as you can afford. Some people chip in a lot more, and it really, really helps out with what we're doing. And a lot of the equipment that we have purchased is because of these folks that are supporting us. So just wanted to make sure people understand what I'm doing with all this. It's ever changing over the years. I've done this for 25 years, 20 years on HurricaneTrack.com, and we're in the age of crowdfunding. People support what they believe in. I know not everybody can. I get it. And that's why I try to make 9 out of 10 posts and whatnot, 90% of my content available at absolutely no cost. So there you have it. What else? I think that's about it. So I will, now I can bring the camera up, I think, and I'll just sign off when we're done. All right. So I'm going to head out in a little while and start setting up camera systems, thinking about Marineland, Merritt Island, Titusville, New Smyrna Beach, and probably up near Jacksonville, somewhere up there. That's for Florida. We will then set up additional cameras, maybe in Georgia. Georgia's tricky. A lot of stories as to why. And certainly South Carolina, thinking Charleston Harbor, and then on up into North Carolina from there. We have something like 12 or 14 live cameras, and it's thanks to those people right there on Patreon. Some people have literally sent us cameras and batteries, and that's why we have so many. That is such a huge help, let me tell you. And so we're going to set these up, and then a bunch of GoPros to go with them as backup, and these weather stations as well. Real quick, speaking of the weather stations, to watch it in real time, you have to sign up on Patreon. It's a way to fund it. You know, it's what I got to do to earn a living. But I am going to do screenshots of the weather station, and we will share those on social media. I'm not trying to hog everything behind a paywall, but I got to fund this somehow, because if I can't fund it, I can't do it, and we might as well just close up and go home. So anyway, that's the plan. We're going to set up all these cameras. It's going to be a lot of driving. Oh yeah, the YouTube feed from the vehicle, which we're going to turn on here shortly, will also be available for $0, 0 cents, 24 hours a day while we're operating. So if you can tune into that, that's going to be on YouTube every moment that we're out there doing what we're doing. All right, so follow along on the live feed on YouTube. All right, covered a lot. Everybody, take it easy. Don't let this bog you down too much and get you down. I know it's stressful, believe me. And we'll be reporting on it throughout the day. My colleague Michael Watkins, that we have worked with for about 14 years, he will be posting video blogs as well. I will put those on Patreon, publicly available. All right? You'll be able to just go to Patreon, and there it'll be. So look for some stuff from Michael Watkins as we travel, and he helps to do updates while we're out working. That is it from me. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. 20 years. Wow. Thanks for all of your support over those years. I appreciate it more than you know. It's time to get to work. I'll talk to you from the vehicle as we spread the cameras throughout Florida today.